Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to Pathways. So my name is Tasnim and I'll be your host for tonight inshallah. So as we're entering the new academic year, this marks the beginning of a very stressful period for our new year 13 students who are going to begin to fill in their UCAS applications to go to university next year. And here at Pathways, our main role is to provide guidance and advice, to students on how to pursue what they want to pursue. And as Muslims, we have a role to be the very best in what we can be. And that encompasses every aspect of our life, including academia, and our studies. And on that basis, tonight's topic is how to get into Cambridge University. So Cambridge is one of the top universities in the world, and it is the creme de la creme. And tonight we're fortunate enough to have 4 guests who are currently studying at Cambridge University to tell us about, how they got into the university, what they're studying, and to clear any misconceptions that any of you may have. And I really urge you all to, pick up the phone and call the studio hotline to ask our guests any questions, because I really want you to benefit from the fact that we have access to people like these today. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys. And Asmaeen, should we start with you? And do you want to all introduce yourselves and tell everyone about, what you're studying and which year you're in? Yeah?
Yeah, sure. I'm Asmaeen Zarif. I'm studying medicine and I'm going into my second year at Cambridge. I'm at Gonville and Caius College and I'm also the Access Officer for Cambridge University Bangla Society. So I'd also like to take the opportunity to say a thank you to TV1 and to yourself for having us, and from the community, from all our members. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to connect to the community.
No, it's our pleasure. Thank you for coming and actually, because a lot of the people watching this don't have access to people like yourselves who can tell them about, how you became to be where you are today. So we really appreciate it here at TV1 too.
I'm Shamal Obida. I'm studying engineering. I've just finished my first year at King's College.
Okay.
So King's College, Cambridge.
Yeah, had to clarify that.
I'm Zainab Ahmed. I'm also going into my second year. I'm studying classics, which is, it's quite a niche subject. It's about the study of the ancient world, particularly focusing on the Greeks and the Romans. So I do a lot of study of the Latin and the ancient Greek language.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm Tahmida Haq. I'm a final year PhD student studying material science. And my PhD is focused on developing new materials for solar cell applications. At Cambridge, I'm based at Sydney Sussex College, which is one of the smaller colleges out of the 31 colleges that are in Cambridge. And last year, I was the graduate vice president for the Bangla Society, so I do have an insight into how the Bangla Society works.
Okay, that's great, guys. And can someone please, might as well ask you, can you please tell us about the role of Banglasoc in Cambridge?
So Banglasoc is one of the sort of cultural societies that came, one of the many, hundreds of societies at Cambridge. It's a sort of a culmination of, or a place for graduates and undergraduate students from different ethnic backgrounds, not necessarily just Bangladesh, to come together to celebrate what we have culturally, as well as celebration of our religious aspects. We do a lot of outreach stuff. That is one of our main aims, to encourage more British Bangladeshi students to try and apply to Oxbridge. And yeah, so it's basically, we try and do everything. We try and have fun, at the same time do events which will improve the lives of British Bangladeshis in the UK.
Okay, and do you guys collab with Oxford at all, by any chance? Or is it like that competition thing, is it that rivalry?
We are actually, now that you mention it, we are hoping to have a partnership soon. So that is something, it's in the works, so I'll keep it a secret for now. But yeah, we have the Mount Snowdon climb, and many societies come together, ISOC, Banglasoc, many people come together for that, and we do try and reach out and combine together where we can. But again, our main focus is Cambridge first of all, the best university, of course.
Okay, and Shemal, do you want to tell us about, how many Bengali people are there right now at Cambridge? What's it looking like?
I'm not really sure on the exact numbers, but there is a
proportion-wise, rough estimate.
I'm not fully sure. It depends on the subject and as to which college you go to. However, the Bangladesh Society is really, really active within the community, and there are a lot of people. There's about 70 or so people just within the group chats and the groups that are active and trying to make a difference and trying to get word out there just about outreach and about all the projects that we do. And then we have other members that come in and out, just go to the events, have some fun, meet new people, try new different things. We do have a lot of people. I'm not sure on the exact numbers. What do you guys say?
Like, is it significant, or is it really like, do you know what, we really need to get more Bengalis into Cambridge?
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was looking at the statistics, of the admissions over the last couple of years. And so we have maybe 50 applicants in 2013 through 2016. Proportionately, I think this is where the point you make about getting more Bengalis in, because there were, in terms of UCAS, there were around 6,000 to 8,000 applicants of British Bangladeshi or Bangladeshi origin. However, only 50 of those applicants applied to Cambridge. And I think that's between 2013 and 2016, of course. We've had increases in numbers between like 85 to 100 in 2017, 18, etc. But it's about, yes, we have a relatively small society compared to other bigger societies, but it's something that we strive to increase in the next couple of years.
And I'm guessing that's through, things like your outreach work, which you touched on before. So do you want to mention some of the things that you do, to try and reach out to other Bengalis in the community?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects that we try to focus on are school talks, going out to schools, and hopefully in the coming weeks you'll see some of us around schools in London, and we are trying to branch out, not be surely just London-centric. But at the same time, in addition to school talks, we try and put on these types of programs to have much more people reached at the same time. And mentoring programs are also available. And of course, our pages are always open, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, for prospective applicants, for parents, anybody to contact us. And we're happy to answer questions anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's hear from you, Zainab, if you haven't heard anything yet. So tell me about how it was applying to Cambridge. And actually, first, did you ever imagine yourself going to Cambridge?
There were moments where I thought, yes, I could, but I remember kind of being at the start of sixth form and not really wanting to, because, I was worried I wouldn't get in. I wasn't too keen on the stress of applying, let alone the stress of being there. And it really is because of my parents and my teachers pushing me to do that. I think my parents said that because I was doing a humanities subject, and it's a very competitive market when you're doing humanities subjects, so they said you have the potential, to go to the best university, don't throw that away. So alhamdulillah, it's because of them and kind of all of the contributions that they gave me to my education that I decided to go for it.
Okay, and that's good to hear, your parents. It's actually quite interesting to hear that it didn't come from you initially, and that it's because of, your parents pushing you that it actually, worked out for the best. Yeah. And at the time, is that something that you appreciated, or was it something where you're like, oh my God, this is too much pressure?
I mean, because for everyone who does their A-levels, it doesn't matter what subjects you're doing, it is a lot of pressure on its own. And to have the Oxbridge application on top of that, it is quite stressful, but I think it's one of those things that you only get one shot to go and apply for it. So if you think that you have the potential, I wouldn't tell anyone to let anything stop them. If they think they can do it, then go for it.
And thank you for sharing that. So that's a typical kind of undergrad kind of attitude, in the sense that as a postgrad, how did, does that mirror your feelings at the time?
So I would just like to correct Zainab on one point. You do get 2 chances, fortunately.
Oh,
so,
you do?
Yeah, I mean, you apply for an undergraduate, and then you could also apply for postgraduate degrees, which may involve masters and PhDs.
So it's one shot per, degree type.
Per degree, yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, you can apply 3 times, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably gets easier as you progress through, because you know what you want to do and what kind of specialization you want to be in. So for me, I did my undergraduate at Imperial College London. I did apply to Cambridge for my undergraduate degree, didn't get in, obviously. But I always knew I wanted to do a PhD, but I wasn't ready to go straight from my undergraduate straight to a PhD, so I decided to take 2 years off to work. And then when I was looking for potential subject areas and PhD opportunities, Cambridge kept on popping up. To be fair, I would have to say I was quite hesitant at first to sort of apply. But then one evening I was like, might as well just do it.
Yeah.
And I went for it. And fortunately, within sort of like 3 weeks, I had 2 telephone interviews. And 2 hours after my second interview, I had the offer. So it was a very easy task in hindsight, but it just took me that sort of 1 day's worth of courage to make that application.
And it was worthwhile in the end. So it just goes to show, you know, as you said, if you believe in yourself and you think, you know, I can do this, and you should just go for it.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised to hear that it's a telephone interview.
Yeah.
Is that for, I know for medicine it's face to face. What about you guys?
I think you go for it.
Thank you. For undergrad, it's mainly face-to-face interviews. The interview process changes depending on which college you apply to. For my college, for King's College, they had an interview face-to-face with 2 of the tutors. This was for engineering. You sit down, you have a problem sheet, and you go through it with them. If you have problems, they'll help you along the way. They just want to see how your brain works.
Yeah.
They want to help you along with it and see what you can do, but it's not really a test, it's more...
Your approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, most subjects, especially the sciencey subjects, they have pre-interview tests about a month or so before the actual interviews, and then some colleges have tests on the day of the interview as well. So I had 2 tests on the day of my interview.
You had 2?
I had 2. I had one at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was just maths, physics, nothing that we'd seen before, a few things that are just thrown at us. And I also had a seminar. It was on something that we'd never heard, something that wasn't covered in A-levels, and they were just trying to see how easily we could pick it up and then answer questions on it. And then there was a final interview. However, this changes per college, this changes per subject as well. The best thing to do for this is to look at the Cambridge website. It lets you know about what all the colleges look at, whether they have different kind of interview processes, whether they have tests, whether they have offers on 3 or 4 A-levels. For sciencey subjects like engineering and natural sciences, it tells you whether they need STEP or not. So the best thing to do is to look online and see what kind of application process suits you. I quite like tests. I work well under pressure, so that's why I applied for King's College. Whereas other colleges, they had more interviews and less tests, which would be better suited for other people that like to show how the brain works and don't work as well under pressure, that kind of thing.
Okay. And it must be quite daunting to be tested on things that you don't know about. How did you find that?
It definitely was. It was very difficult. It was totally out of the blue. I didn't know what was going on. But the thing is, everyone is in the same position. So everyone that's applying, nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew what was going on. So it's a really fair, even ground because of the fact that everyone is in the same position as you are, and everyone is being given the same new information, and they're just learning as they're going along.
And were they like mathsy questions, like really hard maths questions? What were they?
Yes, for engineering they were quite mathsy, physicsy questions. I'd expect,
gosh. I've forgotten all my maths now.
I'd expect for other sciences it would be like chemistry, biology questions, that kind of thing. For medicine it would have been different as well.
Yeah, you can tell us about that a bit after.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You might as well now then. Did you have anything else to add?
Not really.
Okay. So for your medicine interview, do you want to tell me what that was like?
Well, I think in terms of the tests, the medicine interview itself, of course, you have the UKCAT for certain universities and the BMAT for Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, and a couple of other universities. That's the only test you're going to do for medicine admissions test for Cambridge, as far as I know. In terms of the interviews, like Shemal referred to, you have different styles of interviews at different different colleges, and you have different numbers of interviews. So, for example, I had 3 different interviews when I applied to Keys, and that was, first of all, they wanted to check how I would be as a clinician. So that was an interview with a doctor, and it was, whilst we discussed scientific topics and wider public health, it was more about checking your suitability for medicine itself. Then there would be another one looking at your scientific aptitude, about how do you tackle a problem you've never seen before. And again, it's not daunting, but it's about checking how your brain works.
It's quite abstract, isn't it? The kind of questions are not things that you can just memorize an answer to.
No,
they're quite abstract, and they just literally want to see, how do you approach this kind of question, how does your brain tick?
And then,
Quite
the final
interesting.
question was again, the final interview was again, medical, in a medical context. How does your brain work? How do you tackle this medical problem? But again, I think the key aspect to drive home is, no one knows what's going to happen. But it's about just seeing how teachable you are, whether or not you're somebody who can sit in an hour supervision every week with this researcher or this lecturer, and can they teach you these abstract concepts within the time, and are you able to grasp those concepts?
Did you say 3 interviews altogether?
I had 3 interviews, some colleges have only 2 interviews, mine were 1-to-1, other colleges have 2-to-1, it's very college specific.
That's quite rare, to be honest, for medicine to have a 1-to-1 interview, because usually, unless it's like an MMI, those multi-station formats, you usually have like a panel of, interviewers. That was my experience. I applied to only London, guys. I put all my eggs in one basket. Okay, so as someone who's doing something more literary, because everyone else is quite scientific, do you want to tell me about your application process?
So I think when you're doing humanities, there's less in the way of a strict worksheet to go through. So when I applied to Newnham, I had 2 interviews and a language test, which was just a passage of Latin that I had to translate in an hour. I think the most recent freshers for my subject, when they had their interviews, they had a 3rd interview as well, which was a translation with their interviewer, and I think that kind of replicates the supervisions that we have, because I have weekly Latin supervisions where we kind of go through and orally translate a passage. We had that test. At Oxford, they'll ask you to do the CAT, for classics, but they don't ask you to do that at Cambridge, which is why you do the translation exercise as well. Both of my interviews, a lot of the questions that they asked me were on my personal statement. I'd also submitted some written work, so they asked me a few questions on that. One of them was like a music essay, so they asked me things like how I thought music related to classics, which was a really fun question for me to answer.
Again, very abstract,
yeah.
but in a different sense too, obviously.
In a very different
Science,
sense. And they also give you sources. I don't know about you guys, but I was given like pictures in one interview. I was given a picture of some graffiti, and I just had to talk about it relating to the knowledge that I had, and I had a little extract from a play in my 2nd interview, and I got to talk about that using my classical knowledge in that one.
And did you read very widely around classics at the time to prepare? How do you even prepare for this? Because when you don't know what's going to come up.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know how it works at other colleges, but in my experience, they asked me a lot of what I had read, because for humanities, they will use your personal statement as a springboard for things that you're interested in. What I'd say to anyone applying for the humanities is, yes, cover a range of texts or interests, but also don't mention something because you think that it's the right thing to mention. Mention what you yourself are interested in. I was in year 12 briefly looking at English, and one of the admissions tutors that I'd met had said, it doesn't have to be high literature, it doesn't have to be Jane Eyre or Pride and Prejudice. You can talk about, modern dystopia if that's what you're into. So it's very much talk about what you're interested in. So at the time of applying, I was very interested in ancient love poetry and Greek tragedy. So I talked about those things, and so my interviewers knew that that's what I was interested in, and they could talk to me about that. And they expect you to have read a bit more than what you put in your personal statement, but you very much have the opportunity to lead the conversation in a direction that you want. Yes, answer the questions that they're asking you. Don't avoid answering the question because you don't have the answer, but if you know somewhere that you want to take it, then take it that way, because the interview is just a sort of mini replica of what a supervision at Cambridge would be like, especially as a humanities student.
So when you say supervision, just for the benefits of our viewers, do you mean, are they like one-to-one tutorials?
So a supervision is typically an hour-long it's almost like a conversation that you will have with an academic in your subject. I've had a lot of 2-to-1, so myself and one of my peers. I've had a lot of 3 of my peers with one academic, and so we do, we'll have Latin supervisions in which we'll do translations. We have to do 1 essay a week, either on literature or one of our other chosen modules, and so we talk about whatever the essay's on.
Okay.
And that changes for sciences as
Yeah.
well. So rather than going through essays, what we have are problem sheets. So within the engineering department, they call them example papers. They're essentially just problem sheets. Each one takes between 4 and 8 hours to complete. They're all really difficult questions. They're all questions that you kind of cover in lectures, but you don't quite cover enough. So you tackle them as well as you can. You go into your supervision. There'll be someone else from your course with you, so it's normally a 2-to-1. And then you'll sit down with an academic. So this could be a lecturer, this could be a PhD student, this could be someone that does supervision professionally, and you go through the problem sheet. But the point is more so you pick out where you couldn't answer the question. You pick out the problems that you had, and then you ask them about, how can I solve this problem, how can I do it, would it work this way, what concepts don't you quite understand. It's more so looking at what you personally don't understand rather than showing what you do know. So it's a lot more personal, it's a lot more helping you academically, because the supervisions themselves, they don't actually count towards your grade at the end of the year. They're there just as tuition, just as a way to get you to pass your exams. So it doesn't matter how silly you look in a supervision, it doesn't matter how many questions you ask, because it's all about helping you get the grades at the end.
That's really nice, because most universities, you don't have that kind of bespoke teaching where it's literally tailored to what you know and what you don't know. So you're very lucky to have that. Did you say it's like 1 hour per week? How?
It depends. For me, it's about 2 or 3 hours a week, but it's different subjects. So I'll have an hour of electronics, an hour of thermodynamics, an hour of maths, that kind of thing. But it's really nice in a way because our thermodynamics lecturer is also our supervisor. So he goes through all of the lecture notes, and then we can come back and sit with him. And if we didn't understand the lectures, then we can ask him 1-to-1. Which is a really odd concept of just sitting down with a lecturer and asking him about what he taught about and what his research is in and what kind of thing he does, it's just totally different and totally amazing and just brilliant.
Do you know what? Like, I'm literally fascinated hearing this because I'm not used to that. We have like the best thing that we have is like, I'm at Imperial, by the way, studying medicine. I'm in my 5th year now. We have like, those small group tutorials, but having that, bespoke teaching is something that I feel like I would really benefit from too. And it's probably to do with the fact that there's not many people on your course, so they can afford to do that too. But on that note, we're now going to break up, for a short commercial break, and we'll see you soon, inshallah.